How much retirement income can you generate with a $500,000 nest egg? It depends on a lot of things. Where you have it invested, what happens with the market, what safe withdrawal rate you're using, and so on. Smaller nest eggs usually mean less room for error. Like a lot of things in life, it's all about the details. For some people, this may not be enough money to retire on. But for some, especially if you have Social Security, pensions, side income, or other forms of income, it could be enough. Depending on how you invest that $500,000, it can be enough. It isn't just about how much money you have in savings. It's how much income you can create after you retire. If you do have Social Security, pensions, a side gig, or other forms of income, you could have a nice lifestyle in retirement regardless of how much you have in your accounts. It's also important to take debt into consideration. Many people make it a priority to pay off their mortgage before they retire. A retirement without a mortgage payment requires less income. Same with a paid-off car. It's that poor on paper. To guesstimate, there's going to be a lot of assumptions. So this is obviously just a ballpark figure for planning purposes. Inflation rates change, tax rates change, and markets change. Things are constantly changing. To make a guesstimate, let's just assume the inflation rate will be 3% per year. Financial planners typically recommend budgeting for a 3% annual inflation rate per year. We've definitely seen it go way higher than that in the last few years of craziness. And let's just assume your investment returns will average 6% per year. This would be a conservative portfolio. So essentially, we're making a 3% return above the inflation rate. This is one of the reasons you need some higher risk funds to get that growth. I have about a fourth of my portfolio in IRA CDs right now. This helps me sleep at night. They're 100% safe and making 5.45% returns. But that's not enough to keep up with inflation if I'm pulling a safe withdrawal rate of 3.5% each year. In the previous example, with 3% inflation and 6% returns, I could pull 3% out each year without touching the principal, not 3.5 or 4%. Realistically, inflation rates are different every year, and so are your portfolio returns. But again, this is just for planning purposes. In this scenario, I would really want to make 7% or more on my returns. So I do need to keep some of my retirement funds in stocks. This is really oversimplified, but at least it gives you some understanding. I've shared this spreadsheet before, I think a couple of times. But it's so great, I'm sharing it again. It's an investment tracking spreadsheet. I'll link it in the description below. It shows your rate of returns each year. My annual rate of returns in the last 12 months was 6.2%. This will be very different depending on the year. I think 2022 might have been my worst year ever. My annual returns were something like 2%. But some people were in the negative. And back in 2017, 2018, mine was up to like 12%. The annual inflation rate in the last year in the United States was 3.5%. This is at least better than it was. So if I was already retired and the inflation rate was 3.5%, I would have pulled from my principal if I was pulling 3.5 or 4%. 6.2% returns minus 3.5% inflation equals 2.7% growth. This is not enough if I want to pull 3.5% without touching the principal. Eventually in retirement, you'll most likely pull from your principal. But you don't want to do that too early, especially if you retire early. You can use the bucket strategy and keep bucket number 1, the cash bucket, topped off. That way, in a down market, you can still pull money out without a loss. I have a video about the bucket strategy that I'll also link below. We need to look at withdrawal rates. Is 4% the right number? With today's environment and wherever the market is, a lot of people think 4% is too high. This is something people can debate for hours. Experts typically recommend taking up to 4% from your retirement accounts per year in retirement. But a 2021 study now puts that number at a more conservative 3.3%. I read another study that said 3.5%. So I can't tell you what the correct withdrawal rate is for you. I can tell you that I'm planning to use 3.5% or less. When you consider that the average market return is 7%, you would think withdrawing 4% every year would never deplete your portfolio. The growth would cover your inflation-adjusted spending. 7% minus 4% equals 3% growth. The big limitation of safe withdrawal rates is having a withdrawal rate low enough to survive 1 to 2 decades of poor returns or a market crash. Very few retirees follow a strict withdrawal rate like the 4% one. The 4% rule is really just a guideline. I have a video about safe withdrawal rates that I'll also link below. Maybe you want to keep some money around for a health emergency or leave some money to your heirs. The reality is people who have around $500,000 saved for retirement will probably end up spending from their principal. What's important is that you don't run out of money in retirement. That's why you want a withdrawal rate that makes it likely that you won't run out of money. So back to how much income can you generate on a $500,000 nest egg? Again, it really comes down to your individual circumstances. Using the traditional 4% rule, a $500,000 nest egg would generate $1,667 a month or $20,000 a year. And that's probably pre-tax, but that would be the money you'd have for retirement. Applying the new 3.3% recommendation, you could generate $1,375 a month or $16,500 a year. With the 3.5% rate that I'll be using, it would generate $1,458 a month or $17,500 a year. For me personally, my nest egg is closer to $450,000. I was thinking I'd only pull 3.5% from the $400,000 of that $425,000 that's in retirement accounts, at least for the first few years of retirement. This will depend a lot on how much I'm able to bring in from side gigs. It's easy to calculate how much income you can generate from $500,000 in retirement. But the bottom line is, will it be enough for you? Every situation is different, and there's not a one-size-fits-all amount that's enough for you to retire on. If any of you are seeing me for the first time, hi, I'm Julie, and this channel's Happy on Monday. Thanks for joining me. If you found this helpful, please like. And if you're interested in retiring early, consider subscribing to my channel. I'm going to leave you with a quote. You are rich when you're content with what you have. Hope to see you again soon.